34 ready for you guys.
Okay, and then I assume that there's several others that are still in process. Yeah, we have okay, we've done well. Okay, thank you. I have a bit of a summary of kind of where we're at, but first I'm wondering if Chair Warren has any comments or anything that you want to say. Okay. Okay, I think it's helpful. I made a list of where we're at with all the bills, and there's one House bill that the House is going to concur to. I believe there's 3 that the Senate is going to or has already. So those are off our table. We really only have 2 things officially in committee that we haven't taken care of. 2155, which is the official acts of sheriffs, and 2164, which is the sex offenders on school property. It's my understanding that the Senate passed 2228 this morning, and that will be coming over to the House. So we'll take a look at that when it gets there. And then the things, there are 5 or 6 bills that have either passed the House or the Senate, but are not actually in committee. And I'm just going to mention those so we all kind of have those in our heads. The scrap metal bill, which passed the House, it's 2349. It passed the House 120-3. 2323, which was a bill about the insurance department being able to investigate fraud civilly themselves. And that passed the House 122-1. And then we had claims against the state, changing the threshold for inmates from 500 to 750. I don't remember what that passed in the House, but I'm thinking it was like 125 to nothing, or I don't know how many people were there that day. Maybe we could get an update on that. 2212, yeah. And then there are 2 other ones, Senate bills. Senate Bill 222, which was about deference and agencies, and it passed the Senate 31-9. And then a bill about social workers and being mandated reporters, not when they work under attorneys specifically, and that passed the Senate 40-0. And then I'm just going to bring this up. We had, through House Fed and State, was a bill about squatting that the Judiciary Committee looked at. I think that went to the Senate Judiciary Committee. I don't know the number on that one, but that still is in the Senate Judiciary Committee. And so I'm just bringing that up because that was something that the House passed, the Senate didn't get to. Not making a motion or anything about that, but just bringing it up for information's sake. Okay, did you find out 2212 what the vote was?
Madam Chair, House Bill 2212 passed the House 111-8.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. So, and I believe if all goes as planned, we have about 5 shells in the committee, 4 Senate shells and 1 House shell. So that's sort of my summary of where we're at. It was just helpful for me to put it all in one place. And I guess I would like comments from the Senate if you have anything you would like to correct me on that or reply to that.
Sure. Thank you for the summary, Madam Chair. Appreciate that. And so there are a couple of Senate bill and House bills that are still in committee, as I guess it's called shells. And then the ones that aren't are those 2 that you mentioned, 2155, 2164, and 2228, which will be coming over because unless the House is going to concur in the changes that the House Senate made. I don't know what's going to happen with 2228, but we might be back on that. Okay. And then understand that those 5 that have passed one chamber but not the other are, as you mentioned, there's actually 6 of them. Do we have a bill number for the squatters one? I don't recall that bill number either. Two, 378.
Do we have how that was voted on in the House? Or the numbers on that one?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. The House vote on that was 114 to 8. It went over to Senate Judiciary, and we had a hearing on the last day for committees to meet.
Okay, thank you.
So that one we kind of ran out of time on.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and I think then there was an offer from the Senate to the House when we last met on 2164. I don't know if there were other offers on the table when we left or not, but if there were, if we could have a reminder from the revisor. I think that was it.
So would you remind us what the offer was, just so we're all on the same page?
Sure. The offer from the Senate was asking for a concur on the bill.
Okay. So I think we're in agreement that we can't take that offer. We feel like the penalty is just too high. You know, we still are in favor of the 4 amendments that we offered you. And so we just need to keep working on that.
Sure, appreciate that. And I was going to ask, since with the offer or the request to concur rather than adopt the 4 amendments, does the House have a new position on the 4 that are less than the 4, or where are we on that?
Could we just have a minute, if you don't mind?
Of course.
We're going to step outside. Okay. Madam Chair and committee, I think we have, we feel like those 4 amendments are really important. And so what we're just going to keep on the table is asking you to accept our 4 amendments on 2164.
Let us take a look at that then. Thanks. Before we confer, could we have an explanation from the reviser? One of the proposed amendments or offered amendments is to change the first conviction from a severity level 6 person felony to a severity level 8 person felony. And if you could let us know the differences between the 6 and the 8 and include what a level 7 would mean as well.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. As you all know, the sentencing grid is based on the severity level of the crime and your criminal history score. So I'm going to assume, most of these people are going to have at least 1 person felony in their background because they're on the sex offender registry. And most of those offenses will be for crimes that are person felonies. So I'll just read you those, and then if you have other questions. So a severity level 6, if you have 1 person felony, the range is going to be between 32 and 36 months, and that's going to be presumptive prison. And an 8, the range is going to be between 15 and 17 months, and the range, it's going to be presumptive probation. For a 7 there in the middle, it would be between 22 and 26 months. And if you have 1 person felony, that one is going to be presumptive probation. Probation. 6 is presumptive prison.
And 8 is 15 to 17 months presumptive probation?
Yes, an 8, yes. If you have 1 person felony.
And then the 7 was 22 to 26 months presumptive
Probation.
probation on a level 7 too, also.
Obviously, those people could have any range of criminal history, but most of them will have at least 1 person felony in their criminal history.
Could you repeat those one more time?
Yes. So I'll start with an 8. An 8 is a range of 15 to 17 months presumptive probation. A 7 is a range of 22 to 26 months presumptive probation. And a 6 is a range of 32 to 36 months presumptive prison.
Okay, thank you. And was there a reason to request the severity level change from the House?
Yeah, we did some research, and we found out that Missouri has a similar law about going on school property. It's a misdemeanor in Missouri. So presumptive prison on the first offense seemed really just not in line with what the offense is. And so we thought it was important to keep the second offense and the third offense the same as was in the original bill. So we kept second offense and third offense the same, but for the first one, just knocking it down to a level 8 person felony, yeah. And so that was part of the reason for that.
Okay, thanks
Yeah.
for the explanation.
Yeah.
And thank you for the explanation, and let us confer for a minute. So thanks for letting us pause for a moment to concur, or excuse me, not concur, but to confer, to confer. Um, Regarding the balloon amendment that's marked as subsection 2, the provisions of this subsection shall not apply to a person who enters onto school property for the sole purpose of attending a religious service when the school property is being used for a religious service, and they leave immediately thereafter. That's not part of the bill as it left the Senate, so could you offer a little bit of an explanation on that?
The thought behind that was when there are, and I know many instances where churches, new churches that are getting started, whatever, they use public school buildings for their worship services on Sundays. And so usually the schools will offer a pretty good rental rate, and so churches start that way often. And so this is a case of when someone is involved with a fellowship, then it's good for someone on the sex offender registry list to not be isolated. They should have people with them. And, you know, being involved in a fellowship in a church is important. We felt like we didn't want to ostracize them from going to their church service if it met on school property. And, you know, churches, of course, have I know, as far as I know, every church, if you want to work in the nursery, be a Sunday school teacher, there's background checks. So, you know, churches and organizations are taking it upon themselves to do the background checks to make sure that sex offenders that are on the registry are, you know, not able to participate fully as others might. But we feel like it's important that they would be able to attend their church services, even if they met on a school grounds. And in the House, just FYI, the amendment also talked about polling places, which we took that off because I think it's becoming less and less popular for elections offices to use schools as polling places. And we also know people can vote ahead of time, they can mail in. That didn't seem like something that was necessary, but the church service seemed necessary or good.
Thank you for the clarification and the explanation. There's not any further in the House proposed amendment, any restriction that the person be supervised in any regard, or that the no further restrictions. Is that something that?
Yeah, that's not in,
comfortable with?
yes, that's not in our bill because that would be up to the individual churches. And I just might add, we're not keeping people on the sex offender registry from going to church if it meets in a church building. That's up to each individual congregation to decide how they're going to handle that. And in this case, again, it would just be up to the individual church to handle that, how, you know, whatever they want to do about it. But this would allow them to be able to go to the worship service.
Thank you, and we want to make sure that because it's religious service, that's kind of a different type of activity than what you might be. It involves other rights and things that certain other activities don't. So considering the offer from the House, again, none of these were proposed in committee or on the Senate floor, so they're pretty new concepts for us as we sit here today. However, in the spirit of, you know, this bill really came forward because there were some concerns that the state didn't have any policy in place. So in the spirit of getting things done, keeping kids safe at school, the Senate would counter with two things that go together, and so the package would be to, with the church provision, put that on, and then the severity level, looking at making it an 8 instead of a 6, and we heard from the reviser that really, and we heard from the House, the intent was to not make it presumptive prison for your first conviction, but leave the leave the second and the third offense where they are in the bill. And if the goal is, if it's the goal of the House to make it that it's not presumptive prison, but probation instead on your first conviction of this crime, the Senate would be willing to accept a change to a level 7, which accomplishes the House goal of taking it off of presumptive prison and making it presumptive probation, but still indicates that this is a very severe crime. You've already been, if you're on the sex offender registry, we heard from the revisor, you've likely been already convicted of a person felony. And so this isn't your most likely first person felony. And so it would be important, though we could drop it off in the spirit of getting the bill done to protect kids, drop it from a level 6 to a level 7, which again changes it from presumptive prison to presumptive probation. So those would be the two parts of the Senate counter.
Okay, thank you for that, and we will discuss it. I do have a question for the reviser. There are people that are on the sex offender registry that have a misdemeanor and not a felony. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, yes, that is true.
So there's really a difference in the registry, let's call them pedophiles, people who have had an experience with a child. And I don't know how we define that, but maybe it's under 12 or under 14 or something like that. And then there's the cases of where it's a misdemeanor and they're on the sex offender registry list, and that would be that Romeo and Juliet kind of scenario. And I know it has to be 4 years between the two. Or do you have another idea what the misdemeanor would be that would put someone on? Or it could be a public urination, for instance, or what, maybe other things?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Romeo and Juliet scenario that you described, that statute is not in the list of statutes that requires registration. There are some people registering who have been convicted of that crime, maybe because of plea negotiations, maybe for some other reasons, but that one is not listed as a registrable offense. But what is on there is any crime that has a sexual motivated finding. So if you commit a theft and the trier of fact finds that it was sexually motivated, that could be a misdemeanor theft, but you have the sexual motivated finding and you're going to be on the offender registry. Mm-hmm. So it could be any array of crimes.
Yeah. And so, and this bill in particular, it doesn't limit it to people who have lifetime registry or anything. It's just anybody that's on the sex offender registration list.
Anyone who's a sex offender who is 18 years of age or older and whose crime involved a victim who is under 18 years of age.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you for that clarification. So I guess we should discuss your offer. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody, for your patience. We appreciate it. You made a good faith offer, and we appreciate your explanation very much. And we would be willing to accept it if, we're going to have an if in here. If you would be willing to put 2349 into a shell and 2323 into a shell, then we would accept your offer on 2164. 2323 is, it passed the House 122 to 1. It's about the insurance department being able to investigate fraud. And from what I understand, rates go up because of fraud, and the AG doesn't have the bandwidth to investigate lower level, and this would give them that opportunity. And then 2349 is the short little few lines about law enforcement being able to investigate but not enforce the scrap metal civil penalties. And that passed House 120 to 3. So if we could put each one of those into a separate shell, we would take your offer on 2164.
Thanks for the offer. When you say put those two in a separate shell, you mean two different shells?
We have 5.
And that would require putting them into two Senate shells. Well, let us confer on that and get back to you.
I do think we're getting towards the end, and we have 4 Senate shells and 1 House shell, and, you know, it seems like we're kind of, we may even have a few extras by the time we're all done with this conference committee, so thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to confer, and want to make sure that we understand the House offer is to amend 2164 with the religious service exemption and change the severity level for the first conviction to a level 7. And also on House Bill 2155, we're looking to put 2349 into a Senate shell and 2323 into a Senate shell. So thanks for the clarification. Regarding 2349 and 2323, those are both bills that were not heard on the Senate side. However, 2349, scrap metal, is a concept that's been around for a long time. It's a concept that I think usually is heard, something about it just about every session. And I think we've heard before is scrap metal bill 2349, is that a compromise position that everyone is in agreement on, or tell us about that?
Yeah, it actually was. It was a longer bill. It had a lot more in it. It was even making some offenses criminal instead of civil in the Scrap Metal Act. That was all taken out, and the only thing that was left in, which everybody agreed to, was that local law enforcement would be able to investigate scrap metal civil infractions. Investigate, and then they would have to send a report to the AG for enforcement.
So this is expanding some enforcement that's already in place from the Attorney General Office, but expanding it for local law enforcement,
Just the investigation.
the investigation
Yeah,
part of it. Okay. Understanding that, and House Bill 2323 is a new area of law for our Department of Insurance, which would be instituting civil actions for fraudulent insurance acts. And that, again, didn't get a hearing in the Senate. So there's not the same comfort level with that as there is with the scrap metal issue. So we could put House Bill 2349 into a shell so long as, and here's the counteroffer, accept your position on what we're talking about on 2164, and instead of 2349 and 2323 into separate Senate bills, put 2349 into a Senate bill, and also put Senate Bill 222 into a House bill, which is prohibiting deference to a state agency's interpretation of a statute, rule, or regulation or document. That did get a hearing in the House committee. I understand it was tabled. There was a constitutional amendment on the same issue that did pass out of the House this session. That was HCR 5008. So there is some comfort level in the House with the concept, and I think that passed 5008 passed by a vote of 86 to 37. And it did pass out of 222 passed out of the Senate as well. So some more comfort level on advancing that issue since 5008 had strong support in the House.
Yeah. So I think I understand the first part, but were you saying you would be willing to put 2349 into a shell and also 2323 into a shell?
No.
Okay, so you're not accepting 2323, but you're also asking for 222.
Instead, right. One House bill in a shell, one Senate bill in a shell.
Okay. We'll talk about it, but I want to remind you 2228 is still on the table that you all passed this morning. We've had no hearing in any committee, nothing about it. And so, that gives me some angst. I mean, it's a discussion if we could even concur to that. That could be a possibility. Or we can non-concur and we'll be back in committee about it. But that's something else that's hanging out there that the House has not heard at all.
Sure, appreciate that reminder. Thanks. That's a good reminder to have. Thank you.
Okay. So, should we talk? It is 2:42, yeah. Oh, it is? Oh, it is, okay. So. Okay.
I don't mean to be speaking off the microphone. If there are further questions about 228 and the action taken by the Senate this morning, 2228 was originally 242, and there was an amendment negotiated between the AG's office and I believe the League of Municipalities that was pretty much agreed to and then was put into 2228. So if you're looking for the contents of what it is today, 2228 would be the appropriate place. No, 2228 was originally 242. 222 is as it came out of the Senate.
Okay, I think we're ready to, I think we, again, are okay with, we offered you 4 amendments on 2164. You took one and then took one more that you altered. And then, so, okay, we're good on that. We're going to stick on 2323 also being offered into a shell and 2349 being offered into a shell, but we will concur on 2228. And you have 2 bills, 2 Senate bills that one passed 31-9, one passed 40-0. One of those, you apparently chose the 222 because we only have one House shell, actually. And so, we don't have a way to get both of those over the line unless we think of something. But at the moment, that's not part of our offer, our counter offer, I guess it would be. It would be to go with your altered, take 1.5 of our amendments on 2164, and then we would also concur on 2228, and then we would ask for 2349 and 2323 to be put into Senate shells.
Okay, let us discuss. Thanks.
You don't think he would? Yeah, I'll check that. He does. Elizabeth wants 222. Okay, great. They're going to come back and say, if you include 222, we'll say, okay, Elizabeth understands. Isn't this fun?
The chart for these bills must be up to 10 pages at this point.
I told Jason that maybe you could recommend him at the conference.
Yeah. Jason, we need you. Don't leave. Is he going to lunch? Oh, I forgot. Y'all don't take lunch breaks, right? Nobody.
They don't eat.
I ate lunch at 3 yesterday, so I get it. But down there, you just get hooked up to.
What do you guys use to track our shenanigans? Because we need that.
But why does it come in Benjamin? It's not going to Benjamin. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Appreciate the continued discussion about these bills and the offer. And the Senate is not able to accept the House offer, but we will counter with is it all right if we call the shorthand kind of 1.5 amendments to 2164? And we'll offer to put House Bill 2349 into a Senate shell, and that's it. So we'll drop the request for Senate Bill 222 and the discussion on 2228.
And you're also dropping the discussion for the time being on Senate Bill 222, because that was kind of one offer ago.
So to be clear, the 1.5 amendments on 2164, and the other part of the offer is to put House Bill 2349 into a Senate shell, and then drop the discussion on the other bills into shells that we've discussed so far, and the concur on 2228. So the only offer would be the 1.5 amendments on 2164 plus to put HB 2349 into a Senate shell.
Okay, I think we'll have to talk about that. But I'm wondering if we could just do a pause for 1 second and talk about 2062, which is our agree to disagree. We had, new conference committee appointed. So if we could go ahead and just take a pause on this other negotiation and get that done. So to the revisers, do we just have to
I
have
think
an
we have to make
agreement
a
of 4 of us?
new offer, or so it's a House bill, so the Senate should make an offer, if I have the procedure correct. You could summarize what the
That would
offer
be
is.
great.
The way we understand it is that you're going to take 2062 and add the contents of Senate Bill 237.
Well, we need to also put the balloon amendment
From
on 2062 on. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that, we're in agreement on that. Two of us.
Well, at least two of us
Two of us
are.
are. Yeah, okay,
Well, two of us on this side.
yeah, same with us. So we have an agreement, okay? What is the next step? You'll draw it up and then you'll get it to us to sign. Okay, great. Okay. So I guess we're gonna have to talk about the other, yep, just give us a minute, I guess. Okay, I really appreciate everybody's indulgence. I know this has gone on back and forth a lot, but I will say we can't accept your offer. We're going to offer another thing. It's a variation of things we've already talked about. It is accepting what you are wanting with 2164, rather than 1.5 amendments. It is accepting putting 2349 into a shell. And then the exchange is you putting 2323 into a shell and into a Senate shell, and we would be okay putting 222 into our one House shell. So that's kind of our counteroffer. It's a variation of stuff we've already talked about, but it's a little bit different.
So putting 2323 into another Senate shell and 222 into
The one House.
a shell as well. Okay, let us discuss. Thank you. Thank you for the brief pause. So we do want to thank the House for the offer and for the continuing conversation. However, we do need to have some further conversations about the offer with stakeholders and things like that. So we're not able to, we're just going to ask to pause on your offer. And however, in the meantime, want to share that the Senate's last offer still stands, that to put House Bill 2349 into the Senate shell and also accept the 1.5 amendments on 2164.
So just to clarify, we said,
We're pausing on
yeah, so,
offer. Go ahead.
well, just to make sure I understand, we said that offer we're not accepting, but we're offering this other thing. But you're just saying there's still two things on the table?
Yeah, our last offer is still there. I know it's been not accepted, but
Okay,
still
okay.
there. But-
Okay, yeah, very good.
And in the same format it was when we made the offer.
Okay,
So, and then we'll put a pause on what you have offered.
Okay.
Which is 1.5 of the House amendments on 2164, plus House Bill 2349 in a shell, and House Bill 2323 in a shell, and Senate Bill 222 in a shell. And that's what we need to pause on.
okay, okay.
Some
That
discussion.
makes sense. Okay, so is there any
when-
other business we need to do from the reviser stand? We know we're still working on the bills, but any other signing, any other reports, anything we need to do? No? Okay.
Do we have, yeah, 2062 ought to be ready, and there may be some others, not sure, but soon.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so when might we be able to get back together?
Do you want to try 3 o'clock?
Okay, we'll try for 3.
Okay.
We'll try for this room again. It seems like it's working. We have the room all day? Oh, no, it's tomorrow at 3.
So 3 o'clock here today.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, especially thank you to our Senate counterparts. We appreciate
And
it.
to the House.